Here we are, the last Sunday of April 2020, during this coronavirus pandemic, and wondering when we will be able to enjoy gathering in this sanctuary or chapel again, or be safe sitting down in a restaurant to eat. Tomorrow, Governor DeWine will give us a glimpse of how we will, in this state, begin slowly, carefully, to enter into what our new normal is going to be. I believe masks and social distancing and limits on gathering sizes will remain significant parts of it for the time to come. Then the disciples told what had happened and how Jesus had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. In our text this morning, the disciples are living into a new normal in their lives. Jesus is gone, rose from the grave, made an appearance or so, and now is gone. We have a familiar text that John read both in words, and it's familiar in many, many pictures. They walked down that dusty road. Can you picture it? The dusty road with two very sad people, rehearsing all that had happened to them, so distracted by their pain, their aloneness, despair, and disappointment, they don't even see the one who approaches them. Sometimes we look right at something and don't even see it. Such was the case one day in Basel, Switzerland. The renowned theologian Karl Barth lived and taught in that city, and one day he was riding in a streetcar when at a stop another man boarded, happened to take the seat right next to him. The two men started chatting with each other, and Barth asked if he was new to the city. The man replied that he was just visiting for a few days. "Is there anything you would particularly like to see in this city?" Barth asked. "Oh yes," the man replied. "I'd love to meet the famous theologian Karl Barth. Do you know him?" Barth replied, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I give him a shave every morning." The tourist got off the streetcar quite delighted. He went back to his hotel and told his wife, "You're not going to believe this. I met Karl Barth's barber today." The two walking on the road that day were in shock, fear, concern about what all this meant and how would life be able to continue. Dreams were shattered, hope snatched away, the future totally uncertain. One preacher, Sharon Blizzard, put it well when she said, "On the road to Emmaus, they were merely going through the motions, traveling through the day to get to the next one. Their hearts and minds were stuck in a memory loop of grief and pain, so much so that they couldn't see the risen Lord walking right beside them." If you've ever lost someone you love or lost something profound in your life, you know how that could have happened. You know how your loss so consumes you sometimes that you don't see things right in front of your face. You know what it's like to walk the Emmaus Road. Barbara Brown Taylor says the Emmaus Road is the road you walk when your team is lost, your candidate defeated, your loved one has died, the long road back to the empty house, the piles of unopened mail, to life as usual, if life can ever be usual again. Then they told what had happened and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Biblical speak, bread is life. And Jesus became known to them in the breaking of the bread, the breaking open of it, the crack and the crumbs of it, the pain and despair of it, broken life. When your water is not drinkable. Broken life when the oil seeps out of the pipeline and the land can no longer produce food, when babies and children grow accustomed to the sound of bombs awakening them. Broken life when families are uprooted and separated, torn apart, when the medical test comes back and the result is not good. Broken life when the marriage shatters, the position is discontinued, the degree is not granted. Broken life when the virus breaks out and no vaccine is available, when words of hate and racial slurs are uttered, when the medical personnel care for loved ones who are separated from their families, when food workers graciously serve even in the fear of becoming sick, when bodies pile up and funeral directors work nonstop to care for them, when heavy doses of pain meds lead to addiction, when one more prisoner or guard not far from here die, when death comes to one of our loved ones, when ends just no longer can be put back together. We know broken life as a church. Regardless of where you live on the page of full inclusion of all persons in the United Methodist Church, regardless of where, we know of the brokenness of our denomination. We are not in agreement, and maybe we're getting close to being willing to admit that we're not in agreement and celebrate that what we can share is the love of God. But we still have confusion and pain and uncertainty and anxiety, especially for the LGBTQI persons among us. Due to the coronavirus, our general conference is reset for later in 2021, and the pain of that brokenness is carried forward with us. Then they told what had happened and how he'd been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. They walked along that road wondering what life held for them in the future. Do you suppose they felt essential or non-essential at that point? And now, talking to this guy who shared with them some prophecy but seemed unaware of what had happened in their community, to their leader, to the world, they walked along sad, confused, broken. And when they got to where they were going, they reached out beyond that sadness and their own self-concern, and they invited the stranger to come and to eat with them. Writing in the Lutheran magazine in June of 2012, Peter Marty writes about an incident Viktor Frankl recounted from when he was in a Nazi concentration camp. He was at the end of his rope from the deprivation. At this point, when he had lost every possession and had every value destroyed, someone gave him a piece of bread. Frankl wrote, "I remember how a foreman secretly gave me a piece of bread, which I knew he must have saved from his breakfast ration. It was far more than the small piece of bread, which moved me to tears. It was the human something this man also gave to me, the word and the look which accompanied the gifts." Marty comments, "Keep on the lookout for that human something the next time you break bread with another person. Their words may offer more nutrients than the bread in their hand. Their look may open the eyes of your heart. It might all be a small taste of the first Emmaus." Then they told what had happened and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. There are many jokes made about United Methodists, or any church group for that matter, eating every time we get together. Sharing a meal with someone has long been seen as a way across cultures of a sign of friendship, care, peace, hospitality. A friend of mine's mother is in a care center in northwestern Ohio, and one of her struggles at this time is needing to eat all meals in her room by herself. She, an extrovert, understands why. For safety from virus, this is standard, but the sense of isolation becomes real. We take eating together around the table for granted, or at least maybe we used to. Because a lot more happens than just the taking in of nutrients and calories. When we eat together, life is shared. The joys and the sorrows, the frustrations, the bitterness, the accomplishments, the sadness, the hurt, the struggle. When we take the time to eat together, to offer to one another that time and sharing and the nourishment, we begin to recognize the Christ in our midst. And those who are strangers along life's road become vessels through which God speaks to us and opens us to this amazing love of God. We applaud our community meal group here for finding ways to make the meal a carry-out this month, knowing that part of what they offer, the human contact, is lessened, but the food continues to be shared. This week we have bags of blessing for the Worthington Resource Center, and each Sunday we continue to have people come by bringing food, sandwiches, clothing, and other items to share with others. The 2 disciples invited Jesus to stay and eat with them, and Christ became the host of that meal by breaking of the bread. Hospitality is such an important part of the Emmaus experience. Hospitality is such an important part of our church experience, and one of those things that we will need to rethink, redesign, as we come back into the space of the church building to worship and be community together whenever that happens. When that happens, we will need to think of other ways to greet from 6 feet away without touch, at least for a period of time. Next Sunday, we will again celebrate Holy Communion online. If you have the opportunity to gather some bread and juice during the week, please do so. And no, if you don't, that is okay. You can use whatever you have and still participate. Holy Communion is a sacred sharing that we have with God, and we celebrate the all-accepting love of God, which walks along with us down those dusty roads of life. The love of God, which reminds us that in the brokenness of our lives, our community, our world, God is with us. In the brokenness of the bread, we are reminded of God's presence. Again, Barbara Brown Taylor offers words about this text. Jesus seems to prefer working with broken people, with broken dreams in a broken world. If someone hands him a whole loaf, he will take it, bless it, break it, and give it. And he will do the same thing with himself, because that is the way of life that God has shown him to show the rest of us. To take what we have been given, whether we like it or not, and to bless it, to say thank you for it, whether it is the sweet, satisfying bread of success or the tear-soaked bread of sorrow, to say thank you, to break it because that is the only way it can be shared, and to hand it around, not to eat it all by ourselves, but to find someone to eat it with, so that the broken loaf may bring all of us, broken ones, together into one body, where we may recognize the risen Christ in our midst. On this day, we know our brokenness as a community, a church, country, a world. Fear of the future heightened as we recognize how connected in this world we truly are. Embarrassment at our split personality as a church. Wonder about the future. Disruption of markers like graduation and summer camp, concerts and sporting events. Concern for those we love. In our brokenness, we walk on the Emmaus Road, in many ways as individuals, and with the concerns and struggles we carry as a congregation, a country, a church, the world. As we walk, may we stay alert to the risen Christ coming up beside us, showing us in the strangest of ways, breaking life open for us, catching the crumbs as they fall, hearing the cracks, and holding us to face another day. May we know that for us and for all, there is a place. There is a place at Christ's table. And may we not forget in our brokenness to share Christ's bread with other travelers. God help us. Amen.